Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists: Wale Gomez, Public Affairs Analyst, Dr. Ona Ekomo, Security Consultant, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Now, let's start here in Nigeria, where Nigeria's electoral body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has registered 74 of the country's 92 political parties. The chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakubu, says that for now, only 18 political parties remain fully registered.
Accordingly, 74 political parties are hereby deregistered. With this development, Nigeria now has 18 registered political parties. Following the conclusion of the 2019 general election, including court-ordered rerun elections arising from litigations, the Commission was able to determine the performance of political parties in the elections. In addition, they were also assessed on the basis of their performance in the area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory, which coincided with the 2019 general election.
Well, this is where we are with political parties in Nigeria. You'll recall that in March 2019, shortly after the general elections, Femi Falana, SAN, and some other persons had said, look, in reality, given the performance of the political parties, 73 political parties took part in that general election.
91.
No, there were 91 political parties, but at the end of the day, 73 political parties ended up participating in the process. Femi Falana, SAN, and some others had argued at the time that in reality, only about 10 political parties were viable in the light of the provisions of Section 225 of the 1999 Constitution, which had been altered in 2017 by the fourth alteration number 4 of 2017, 1999 Constitution as amended. But at that time, INEC didn't deregister political parties. INEC took its time. And now this time around, INEC has taken this decision. The Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, is saying that what the INEC has done is not in order because there are still local government elections to be held. And if you go by the conditions under Section 225 of the Constitution, who says some of those political parties will not, at the end of the day, meet the conditions spelled out, in terms of having a ward, winning 25% in a state, or, in the elections conducted generally and meeting the requirements. So even Femi Falana himself is now upholding the position of the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. He's saying, well, what INEC has done, while it is in order, it is premature. Yemi, let me start with you.
I think, part of this is what we've always talked about what happens when there's incomplete information. So, for example, for the sake of argument, INEC released the parties, but didn't provide reasons why. They gave the reasons, as you said, that the Constitution allows them to register them, but it now didn't say which party breached which of those parameters. And I think it's also interesting that we've gone from where parties challenged INEC's ability to deregister them, which they did a couple of years ago, until the Constitution was amended, because the provision then was that electoral law is subject to the Constitution, and the Constitution makes no provisions. But now the Constitution does. I think INEC would help the conversation if they actually released what provision each party flaunted to allow it to be deregistered. But I think also importantly is Mr. Falana's point that INEC has been selective in which part of that part of the Constitution it's enforcing. Because part of that is if any of the parties violates the terms of its registration. And part of its registration that for a political party in Nigeria is to have audited yearly accounts.
Section 224
exactly.
of the Constitution.
And so his point is that the two big parties haven't complied. So why would you deregister a whole bunch of parties, leave the two big parties who've also flouted part of the rules for what we now have? And I guess I'll use Mr. Falana's words that it's premature for two reasons. One, the one you said about the local government elections, and then secondly, because it wasn't applied across board.
Well, Mr. Gomez.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that. There was a commissioner for INEC, South, and Cross River State, and Delta State Commissioner that oversees, or director, or whatever, oversees that oversees the affairs of issues around that area in terms of political parties. And he came out, he said that most of the ones that were delisted or released were parties that did not perform very well during the election, and also there are parties that do not have headquarters in all geographical areas, and he gave the reasons why they were...
For each party?
Yeah, why they were released or why they were delisted. And from his point of view, I can understand where they're coming from, because it's just all sorts of people setting up parties for their own personal gain without taking into cognizance the rule of the day. I agree with INEC with the way they've done it. Let's prune it down. If they went through certain structure or criteria that are right and that cannot be challenged, I see no reason why they cannot delist all this parties, because it's just too many parties hanging around the whole place.
Well, Dr. Nkomo, what do you think? I mean, some people are saying that is there something else that INEC has to do in terms of registering political parties? Because even now that INEC has deregistered 74 political parties, it still has before it about 100 applications from political associations asking to be registered ahead of 2023. So it's not as if now that we have deregistered, that would automatically reduce the number of political parties. There's something that INEC has to do to make sure that at no time would we have so many parties in the name of just observing the principle of multi-party democracy.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes to what we call the Babalawo character of Nigerians, where the Babalawo wants to take his trade to the grave with him rather than share it.
Babalawo in English is the father of secrets.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's a good one. We just know him as a good medicine man. But having said that, what I mean by that is you, instead of building big combines, instead of building big viable entities and making party democracy a serious business that it ought to be, because you're talking about the art of governance. You're talking about the art of leading 200 million people or providing services to them. And that is why even the big parties that Ms. Yemi is talking about, they're really not performing that well, because it's not taken as an axiomatic proposition in terms of what party politics should be. It's about power. That's why you see all this cross-carpeting. It's like a political prostitution. It's about, I just want to get in there. It's a vehicle to get to state power and then see what I can amass or whatever. But it's not about service. If party formation or whatever, or even registration is based on the principle of service, first, the government should not give one kobo to any political party. They should be self-sustaining, and I hope they are now, I don't know. But then secondly, and most importantly, if they don't have a real purpose and an ideology for being there trying to serve people, then they shouldn't even be in business in the first place. But it's not about any person who has a little bit of naira in his pocket. He wants to form a political party because he wants to use that as a vehicle for making money. I mean, even just from the populace, because people don't know that much. I mean, so you can see it's like, it's unfortunate, but it's not right. I think we should, this is governance now we are dealing with. We should really come to it with some seriousness, with some gravity, and in fact, with a hope to serve the people, really serve, contribute. That's the meaning of service. Contribute to this country. Because everybody wants to download, but let's put back in there.
Well, let me come back to you. Now, the question has been raised that in the Fayeme case, Gani Fayeme, fought for the openness of the political space. And then there was also INEC versus Balaram Musa, which was determined by the Supreme Court in 2003, saying that, look, the main issue about political parties is about the freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of association. Now, when you deregister political parties, are you not violating these principles? And maybe that's why some political parties and the IPAC are saying that they are going to court to test this.
But I think that two things I want to say. Just want to piggyback. So we have 18 political parties. Two of them, one was registered after the election, so they left them, quote unquote, because they haven't been tested. And the second one went to court preemptively to prevent themselves from being deregistered. But I think it's important because the use of our judiciary when it comes to our elections, I think it's quite fascinating, not only in determining who the winner of an election is, if you look at Imo and Sokoto, but then also now determining what can be done to a political party if we can quickly run to the court and the court can say, don't deregister the political party. But I think to Doctor's point, the issue about what is the essence of a political party. Yes, there's freedom of association, freedom of expression, but because there is a cost to being a political party and running elections, I mean, for 74 political parties for the elections, we had to print ballot papers. Some people fielded presidential candidates, but didn't campaign anywhere, really. Maybe they campaigned in Lagos and Abuja. So at what point, yes, you're free to get together and say, this is our party. But at what point should that then put a cost on me as a Nigerian because you're not serious? You can't want to be president of Nigeria and campaign in 2 states. Obviously, that means you're not serious. So there must be a penalty for that because there's a cost. There's a cost to the ballot paper, there's a cost to the logistics, there's a cost associated with the fact that you said you want to run. Because every meeting that's done with candidates, you're there. Every meeting that's done with political parties, you're there, you can send someone, and there's a cost associated with that. So if we were actually joking that we should sue these political parties and ask them to refund to the coffers of the federal government some of this monies that they've wasted. So I don't think that the narrative...
Does the federal government still fund political parties?
No, not political parties, elections, in paying for elections, in printing ballot papers. So I don't think the framing should be around keeping people quiet in terms of freedom of association. You can associate, but the next step of becoming a political party,
you must meet the requirements.
Exactly. And also,
that's where INEC comes in.
And it needs to even be raised because the requirements to turn from a political association, which we can have 5,000, nobody cares. But by the time you want to put the name of your party on a ballot paper, you must meet certain criteria so it doesn't negatively affect the populace.
Then you can throw that back to INEC because it was their responsibility to have checked everybody on
when election.
In the first place.
The current guidelines, INEC can only go by the current guidelines that exist. So now we need to put in guidelines, because I'm sure they'll say the
Constitution. Which says that every party must be a federal party.
Exactly, or do whatever, have an ideology that says blah, 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 whatever it is. But
is there any party that has an ideology?
Question for a special episode.
It's a jam question.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, we'll take a short break here on ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Wale Gomez, public affairs analyst, Dr. Ona Ekomo, a security consultant, and Yemi Adamolokun, executive director. Enough is enough. Now let's talk about coronavirus, which is a major trending topic. The death toll in China from the outbreak of the new coronavirus has now gone beyond 800, overtaking the 2003 SARS outbreak. According to latest figures, a total of 813 people have died from the new infection, compared to 774 killed by the severe acute respiratory syndrome. Both are types of coronavirus that originated in China, and virologists say they are genetically close. The majority of deaths from the Wuhan coronavirus outbreak are concentrated in mainland China, although there has been one death in the Philippines and another in Hong Kong and in other countries. Officials say there are more than 37,000 cases, with the vast majority of those in China. As of China, the virus has spread to 25 countries. The World Health Organization says the infection rate is slowing down for the moment and has raised concerns about misinformation, which it says can hinder the fight against the infection. Coronavirus, big challenge, big challenge for the world. 99% of the cases we're told are concentrated in China, but other countries have been affected. with countries having to design responses, and the World Health Organization classifying it as a public health emergency of international concern. Here in Nigeria, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control has taken steps, the Federal Ministry of Health, some states of the Federation, like Lagos, like Ogun State, have also been in the forefront of taking preemptive, preventive steps. And then the other day, we heard that there was an outbreak of something that has not yet been determined in Benue State, when the senator representing PDP Benue South, Abamoro, informed the Senate that there were about over 100 cases and that about 41 persons had died. But what's our assessment of Nigeria's response to this global epidemic, as it were? Dr. Ekomu, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. Well, Nigeria has a good track record of responding to pandemics of this nature. We were able to battle the Ebola virus successfully, and the Nigerian example became a model for the rest of the world in terms of battling pandemics. Now, our response this time has been prompt again, but I have some problems. I have some personal observations. I came into the country yesterday and crossed the border. And yes, first, the health people are up front. They have first contact with all persons, deplaning or coming into the country. And they have this form which they give to you to fill. And then they now take your picture or whatever, they image you to see if you have the disease or if you have a fever before they let you in. But my problem is, why didn't you just give these forms to the airlines to give to passengers so that when they are coming, they fill out these forms? Because these are the little things we do that make compliance difficult. Right there in the hall, people were so disgruntled, disenchanted, upset. So even people are...
Dr. Ekomu, were you coming from China?
No, from Chicago.
Oh, okay.
They see, but not China.
No, just to be sure,
No, sir.
So you want us to take off?
Otherwise, I jump off this set now.
No, very close to Yemi.
You're very close to Yemi.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Don't worry, Yemi's phone will be first collected.
So, but anyhow, I think just in terms of implementation, these are just little ways to tweak these things. There should be a lot of thought going into some of these things. The form was very good, but a little bit too detailed, even for people who are standing and filling forms, but a little bit too detailed, sometimes repetitive. But it was a good step. And I saw that immigration took a second line to Port Health, or to the, not Port Health, actually, these are FMOH guys, Federal Ministry of Health guys, who took the first position before immigration and then other border agencies. But having said that, I think we are on the ball this time. We should stay serious about it. Let's not let any coronavirus enter the country. And, let's just keep a good record there, because we have enough problems here at home to deal with.
From what you observed, the major concern is how the coronavirus has put medical personnel at risk. And on Arise News, on the morning show, we've been having a daily, coronavirus update. And one of the points that have been made about the medical personnel that we have interviewed is about, adopting medical countermeasures in terms of protective gears by medical personnel to protect them. We had a Stella Adedevo case in 2014 with Ebola virus. China has the case of Li Wenliang, the first doctor, to blow the whistle about coronavirus. He has also died. So those medical personnel at the airport, were they wearing any protective gear?
No, sir. They were as exposed as I was. That was coming in. I saw a few people, airport workers, who had their masks
surgical
on.
masks.
But the FMOH guys, they weren't wearing anything. And they were shouting, and if it wasn't organized. Just the usual Nigerian thing. It wasn't really organized. You come over here, you submit the form to this guy, you cross over to go take your picture here, and people are crisscrossing. So it was a lot of chaos.
Nobody coughed.
I will take cover.
Like now.
You just coughed.
Over to you.
Coronavirus and Nigeria's response.
Unfortunately, we tend to respond when there's a real and present danger. And I think luckily for us, but unfortunately in terms of systems and processes, we responded to Ebola in the way that we did because there was a real and present danger in the Liberian gentleman that was here. Unfortunately, with coronavirus, we're dealing with coronavirus, we're dealing with Lassa fever, then this one in Benue as well. But in a lot of ways, in terms of communication, preventive measures, it seems very distant because I don't believe that from the Federal Ministry of Health to the state governments, we don't really see them front and center and enforcing some of these things. As hand sanitizers in schools and public spaces and banks. I mean, the way the private sector, for example, rose up to Ebola, it was really quite quick because people could feel that it was here. But for Corona, China seems far. And unfortunately, I think that is a disadvantage in how we respond.
Gomez, is China so far away?
The problem with the virus is that it's not about the distance. It's not about the distance. It's airborne. I mean, someone can be on the plane that you've been and had it and still be carrying the whole thing on the plane. And like you said, everyone's just crossing each other, left, right, and center. And what I find very amusing in all these things is that we feel that it's only China that's involved in this, not Nigeria. Incidentally, I had a business relationship with a Chinese person, and she called me last week and said, what's happening to my order? And I said, no, we're checking, make sure that the one you brought in hasn't got the virus in it. Now, the problem we have in Nigeria is that we plan late. We should start planning from now because the biggest fear of this Ebola is for it not to get to Africa. Because when it gets to Africa, that might be the end of everything.
Well, there have been suspected cases in Kenya, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, but Ghana, all of those cases except that of Cameroon proved negative.
Yes.
The person in Cameroon came from Wuhan, the epicenter of the virus.
So the only fear, that's the fear where everybody is worried about, that getting to Africa and getting positive in Africa, because that would be a big mess for the rest of the world.
Doctor, if I can come in here, what the Americans are doing is, if you come in from anywhere in China now, you are quarantined for 2 weeks. It's automatic quarantine. It doesn't matter. And cruise ships come, they are quarantined also. It doesn't matter. And that is because I heard in Nigeria, they say you can just come in, you can just stroll in and go.
No, the Nigerian method is that you self-quarantine.
Yes. I mean, that is really ridiculous.
Right.
Because the person is going to go and look for Naira the next day. What do you mean by saying they'll stray for a time themselves?
Quickly, let's take another subject of public interest. The coalition of northern groups, CNG, has announced the establishment of a regional security outfit known as Shege fasa. This comes 1 month after Amotekun, a similar outfit established by governors of the southwest states of Nigeria. At a news conference, Abdulaziz Suleiman, spokesman of the group, said the CNG had written to the Northern States Governors Forum for support. He says if the northern governors and leaders from the region fail to give the necessary support, the CNG will obtain the required legal backing for the outfit from the relevant federal authorities. Abdulaziz said, and I quote, "The outfit is designed to be the vanguard of the entire North, encompassing every ethnic group and religion, and will be patriotic in its operations, in addition to performing general complementary tasks for enhancing security in the region," unquote. Now, Amotekun, Operation Shege fasa, where will all this end? Legal issues have been raised, political issues have been raised. What are the implications for national unity? Gomez, let me start with you.
We're expecting some statements from the the Attorney General of the Federation regarding this, as quick as it did with the one as regards Amotekun. But when I heard this story, I felt now they're challenging the operations of Amotekun. They don't want Amotekun to overrun them. That's the way I feel. And if we have a national unity, if you have a country that is united, we should be competing on things like this. The global security outfit of Nigeria should be the one that should be vanguarding security of the country. It shows a breakdown in our security architecture for people to be, for different states and regions to be having their own security outfits to protect themselves. I think it's not the way out, and the security apparatus should take note of this.
Yemi?
Sure. I think it's interesting. I think it was on Twitter that someone said it was the Southeast governors that initially mooted the idea of a regional security network. The Southwest governors went ahead, got backlash. They've gone back to get the legal backing for it. Now the Southeast governors are going to ride on that and set up their own structure. The Northern one is a bit interesting because it's not being driven by the governors. It's being driven by...
the coalition of NGOs, I guess.
Exactly. The Sultan has come out to say that he doesn't support it because the people pushing it are the same ones who are partially responsible for some of the challenges. So I think it's slightly different in that regard, and I think it's sort of quite presumptions of the body to say that if they don't have the support of the governors, they will then apply to get their own legal backing.
Well, the support of the governors is also not guaranteed. And by the way, Shege fasa means I dare you to attack or surrender in Hausa. Yeah. So we take a short break now. When we return, I'll take Dr. Ekomu's... you haven't finished? Yes, I'll come back to you, Yemi and Dr. Ekomu. So we'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Wale Gomez, Public Affairs Analyst, Dr. Ona Ekomu, Security Consultant, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Now, Yemi, before we went on break, you were still commenting on Operation Shege fasa. I dare you to attack or surrender. In other words, I dare you to confront me. You are at my mercy.
Indeed, I was talking about the fact that it was the northern one was slightly different. So we have Southeast, we have Southwest. This northern one, Shege fasa, is by a coalition of individuals / CSOs. It's the same organization that gave Igbos the October deadline in 2017 to leave northern Nigeria. And as Mr. Gomez said, the AGF hasn't said anything about them. And also their point that if they don't have their governor's backing, that they'll go ahead and find legal backing on their own, which I find quite odd because the governors do control security in their state. But I think what's, for me, more interesting is the fact that, slightly disagree with what Dr. Gomez said, as a federation, Mr. Gomez said, as a federation, our federal security should focus on things that affect the federation. And as we've continued to sort of advocate for state policing, this regional policing, if you want to call it that, is really a step. Is that it was almost like, okay, fine, if we don't want to go from federal to state, let's do halfway. Because the truth of the matter is that the federal government has not been able to secure the lives and properties of Nigerians. True. So if governors are now stepping up and saying, you know what, let's relieve the pressure as a way to show that you can't do it. So if we can relieve the pressure with results, so Southeast does their thing, Southwest does their thing, and the northern governors decide they want to do their thing, great. But if at the end of it, we now see better security for citizens...
South-South.
I haven't heard anything about them working together to do that, so I'm not commenting on that.
Okay.
But for those three regions that are talking about it, if we then see it translate into safer spaces for the citizens who live in those spaces, it then makes it a much easier conversation to have in terms of this, our national conversation around the inability of the federal government to secure Nigerians. We're still talking, the National Assembly, House of Rep, is talking about service chiefs that are long overdue, but the president refuses to do anything with them. So you have people in office, Nigerians are dying in their hundreds. You have people in office who have the mandate and the resources to protect them, not doing anything, but there's no penalty for not doing your job. So what's the incentive to do it? So I completely support the state governors who want to protect their citizens because I live in a state, and I'm grateful to the Southwest governors for choosing to take actions to protect me.
Well, but in the case of this Northern Initiative, the critical difference is that this is not being supported by the Northern elite or by the governors themselves. Exactly. Whereas in the Southwest, you know, it has the support of the governors and even of traditional rulers. Indeed. I even saw a picture of Yoruba traditional rulers all decked out in leopard-like attire, Amatekun gear. But Dr. Ekomu, you are the security expert.
Sorry, sir, before you said, and I think it's extremely important to also re-emphasize that in the context of what Mr. Gomez said, that the Attorney General has said nothing. Now, when governors who actually have a mandate to actually do something, they have a security vote, to do something with security, say they are trying to secure their citizens who they are responsible before say they're doing this, without thinking, you came out and then backtracked and said, oh, that's really not what I meant. But individual groups that have no mandate to do this, and the Sultan of Sokoto has said problems, the governors have said nothing. And the AGF...
No, at least one governor has spoken up to say that this is not coming from the Northern Governors Forum.
Yeah, no, I mean as a body to say yes, no, we're in consultation with them, whatever. But the AGF is...
So it looks like Operation Shege Kafasa is dead on arrival. But Dr. Ekomo, you are the security expert.
Well, I think I'll take us back in history to 1285, the Statute of Winchester, where the British government said every citizen of the age of 12 and above should be responsible for his own protection and bear firearms. What happened? There was a lot of robberies, highwaymen at that time. And so they issued that statute and said, look, let's make this thing available to everyone. Even before that, 1066, the franc pledge system. What I'm trying to say here is that security had always been in the hands of the individual. We took our legal system from the British, empire or whatever, the British colonial masters. We don't have the right to be armed here. No, hold on, we do. You have to go into the law. So we took our legal system from them, but we kind of been selective in what is being enforced or how our security is being done here. And I dare say that security continues to be the responsibility of each and every Nigerian, including you and me. Now, what the state will do, and that is everywhere, including in America, you first protect yourself. The state will get to you. In the case of the US, call for service, average time is 3 minutes. They will get to you, they guarantee you will get to you in 3 minutes. Now, my question, what I've been asking here, and if you look into this Guardian, there was a report there where I was quoted extensively. What I've been saying here is, what is the measure of performance for each executive? You're talking about service chiefs, whatever. What is the measure of performance of a service that is being given? It's a service. The security service is a service. That's why we call it service. What is the measure of performance? How long will it take you to respond to a citizen in distress? We just talked about CDC and disease pandemic response. Yes. You know, so what about security? There is a measure for it. I'm in that business. I know. There is a measure for security. So are we implementing these measures? So let me just, to come back to the story of Amotekun and Shege Kafasa. Now,
sorry, measure in terms of what the agency themselves, they know. So if you take police, for example.
Effectively, look, the way we fund agencies is cost effectiveness. Exactly. Key performance indicators. KPIs. Okay. Effectiveness. How long does it take you to, how many arrests, how many things do you prevent, and so on and so forth. Those are the measures for security service everywhere in the world. Yeah. Okay, so it's only Nigeria that we don't bother with that. In fact, they don't even give you statistics. Please, 1 second. They don't even give you statistics of real crime statistics. It's hidden. And rather, you're supposed to give it out so that the legislators or legislature can fund you better. And then you now start showing improvement. So that is where the whole security architecture, Doctor likes to use that, falls on his face. It falls on his face because we are not even measuring the output of that system. We just carry dead bodies and we say, oh, thank God, we survived today. I mean, that's not good enough. So back to Amotekun again, please. I don't want to stray too far because it's a big topic, but back to Amotekun. The point here is the Southwest governors are, this is what I've been saying for God knows how long. Just go back to all of my tips. You see, I've been saying, hey, take your security into your hands. Vigilance services, even my new book, that is the be-all, end-all. Vigilance services, you must be vigilant first in your own case. Back to the Roman vigils. That's what they were doing. See, you see crime, you raise hue and cry, and then people come and join you and you beat the people, like the old ole here in Lagos. You know, you can't say police. The police cannot. How many policemen do we have? I told you here on this 300,000 men, and more than one half of that is out for VIP protection anyway. So who are the way to police a population of 200 million people? Military will have only 150,000. How many? Somebody came out the other day, a former military guy, said, look, I have been calling for a 10,000-man military surge into the Northeast. And he said to me, doctor, you don't know what you're saying. He said, look, we need to hire 50,000 more men to move into the Northeast alone, not even just 10,000. And what was the problem with the 10,000 I suggested? They said we don't even have ways of equipping them adequately to do that job in there. So look, there are so many problems.
We just got some helicopters.
Oh, thank God.
Which we launch and commission with
Thank God. Thank God. So, you know, so what I'm saying is, the Shege Kafasha people, if they cast it in terms, if it's let's say some kind of a regional, I don't know, Tonton Makut, then I have a problem with it. If it's a legality in itself, I have a problem with it. But if it's a regional, even private initiative-led vigilance group to stop all these killings in the north, it's good. It's a great idea. Perhaps they should go and negotiate with their governor so that they can get this and then get resourcing. Because my next question is, how are they going to be resourced? Are they going to be resourced by the bad guys? Who's going to give them money to buy equipment to carry out the things they need to do? Just like the governors are proposing or are doing here in the Southwest with Amotekun. So Amotekun is, you know, is the best idea that came out in 50 years. And I think all other regions should copy that idea and improve their security. The federal forces will come as a response force. So you will become a force multiplier. You know, that's the vigilance service will become, so you become the eyes and ears of the federal forces, and they will come in, because that's the only way, like Boko Haram, that's the only way to defeat them. If you are waiting for the day that the troops will take over the whole landscape, it won't happen.
Well, I mean, if we go by the paradigm that you have tried to define, then there will be need for cooperation and collaboration between the federal forces and these regional security outfits that are emerging.
And they are all there to provide intelligence anyway to those people and provide immediate response. That is to keep the bad guys from, you know, running over the spaces.
You will need the necessary political will.
Indeed.
At the level of government.
Indeed.
To be able to realize this.
Indeed.
You know, in reality, what we have is government saying, look, this is suspicious, and we don't think that is the right way to go. Maybe perhaps at the end of the day, what we really need is state police, as recommended in the 2014 National Conference. But that's another subject entirely. Let's take a look quickly at another subject of interest. The United States has stated that the $308 million ABACHA loot, which will soon be repatriated to Nigeria, must be placed in an account. And if the money is stolen from that account, Nigeria will be made to replace it. The spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, Morgan Otagos, said in a statement that this was one of the agreements that was reached between the United States, Nigeria, and the island of Jersey, where the funds are being kept. The statement read in part, and I quote, "The funds will be used by the Nigerian Independent Sovereign Authority for 3 infrastructure projects in strategic economic zones across Nigeria. To ensure that the funds are used responsibly and for the good of the nation, the agreement includes mechanisms for monitoring the implementation of these projects, as well as external oversight, and it requires Nigeria to repay any funds lost as a result of any new corruption or fraud to the account established to hold the returned assets. This return reflects the growing international consensus that countries must work together to ensure stolen assets are returned in a transparent and accountable manner." End of quote. Now, that's the story. I'll leave you a few minutes to reflect on this as we go on a break. And when we return, we'll look at this, whether it's an insult or a very good suggestion, considering Nigeria's record with the management of repatriated funds. We'll be right back. It's still ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Wale Gomez, public affairs analyst, Dr. Ona Ekomo, security consultant, and Yemi Adamolekun, executive director. Enough is enough. Now, before we went on break, I had introduced the subject about the ABACHA loot and the plan by the United States to supervise the spending of that $308 million by the Nigerian authorities. Now, what the Nigerian government has said is that these funds will be used to complete the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the second Niger Bridge, and the Abuja-Kano Expressway, and that the fund will be domiciled as part of the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, PIDF, with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA. Now, and I'd asked the question, Gomez, whether, the proposal by the United States is an insult, or maybe we asked for it, and whether, what has been suggested is in order, so that the money doesn't get relooted.
Whether this is the greatest insult that has ever come over to the state called Nigeria.
You're sure?
I am definitely sure. How can you have proven that this thing was stolen from our country, and you're telling us to guarantee that we'll use it for certain purposes? Just return the money, and whatever I want to use it for, we'll use it for. They don't have a right, and we went there to sign those papers. It's an insult on every single Nigerian. For them to have confirmed that this money is meant that it's for Nigerians, they automatically need to return it back to Nigeria without conditions. They shouldn't be going around and telling us to sign some papers that we will return it.
It was a tripartite agreement. It wasn't as if the decision was imposed on us. We also...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That I like the way you want to put me through that one. Because I don't understand who will go there and sign those types of paper and that we agreed to those terms. If we had made a noise about it, that this is what we found that we got ABACHA funds from certain quarters, and it's been confirmed that it belongs to Nigeria, and the American government is telling us to sign papers, and we're refusing to sign. Nigerians will respect them more for that.
But Dr. Oyekomo, the story out there is that, funds that were repatriated previously, Nigerians didn't know what happened. There was no transparency, there was no accountability. Yeah. Maybe this condition would help to ensure greater transparency and accountability this time around. What do you think?
I think that is the ostensible reason for those that tripartite agreement and the conditions that have been imposed. The only problem I have with it is it runs counter to the principles of sovereignty from the Westphalian Treaty 1885. We're a sovereign country, so we're not supposed to be, nobody is supposed to be dictating to us what to do with our own assets.
In any case, it's our money. We can do what we like with it. That's the Nigerian position.
Not in such simplistic terms, but really, at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to.
We will put control over it.
Because, if you say we are a sovereign nation, and the U.S. is a sovereign nation, then that sovereign nation should not come over here and tell us what to do with our money. It's not aid. It's not foreign aid. Remember, when it's foreign aid, they tell you where and how to spend it. Yes. But this is not aid. This is not even a loan. This is our asset that was illegally repatriated overseas and is now finding its way back to our shores. So I think the U.S. government position is a little bit...
but
it's not tenable.
Isn't there a positive side to it? I mean, the same administration that told us at the time that ABACHA didn't steal is now talking about ABACHA loot. Isn't that a good development, Yemi?
And I think I'll play devil's advocate a bit on this, and I'll say that, first of all, we don't know what makes up the ABACHA loot. It's $300 million odd. It could have been from the loan. I mean, it's the same. The Paris Club lent us money that we mismanaged. Then they helped us to write it off. So if you come from the perspective that we have given aid, we have given loans, that this country mismanaged, we don't even know if part of the money that we gave is part of this money that we've now repatriated. So in the sake of the money that we gave to the Nigerian people, we want to make sure that the Nigerians get the money this time around. You can say that. But I think, honestly, more importantly, is what it speaks to in terms of our governance as a nation. For a sovereign country to be able to tell another sovereign country that you have a track record of stealing money. So this money that we are returning to, your president, to prove our point, obviously, your president stole it and brought it to our country. We have now helped you find it. We want to give it back to you, but because you have this bad problem of just always stealing. So please, can we agree on something? So that this whole process of stealing and coming back, we can ensure that it helps Nigerians in terms of development. Let's agree that you will use it for ABC. We will put it in an account that all of us can see, so that at the end of it, we will clap for each other that, yes, Nigeria is doing well. That's literally what they've said.
They don't have the right.
Now,
you have broken it down.
I'm not saying that. I'm not debating their right or no right. I'm debating the fact that they felt they could, that they did, and that, more importantly, Nigeria agreed. Because in Nigeria, yes, and that is your point. In Nigeria signing that tripartite agreement, Nigeria agreed to what America said, that we have a problem with stealing. So therefore, this one, as you have said, we will do so that this money can have life.
Cannot be more correct.
That's it. That's it.
Well, let's take one final topic before we call it a day. The U.S. Senate has acquitted President Donald Trump of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress and justice following a historic 4-month trial. The Republican majority Senate voted 52 to 48 to acquit Trump of abuse of power and 53 to 47 to acquit him of obstruction of Congress. 52 Republicans voted to acquit Trump of abuse of power, while all 47 Democrats voted to convict and remove him from office. Utah Senator Mitt Romney was the only Republican to break ranks, voting for conviction on the abuse of power charge. But Romney sided with the Republican majority on the obstruction of Congress charge. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives impeached Trump in December for withholding military aid to Ukraine to pressure Kiev to investigate his political rival, Senator Joe Biden. Well, I mean, after 4 months of investigation and trial, we now have the final result. President Trump remains the 3rd American president to be impeached and not to be removed from office. Since this happened, he's been attacking the Democrats. He has even fired, persons from the White House in a way, of a demonstration of vengeance. But Gomez, you are the only person here with an American. Is Dr. Ekomo also an American?
I knew that from the
two of you with dual nationalities, but maybe you take on the subject.
We know ourselves when we see ourselves.
Yes.
The issue here is that when they started this stuff about the impeachment, I remember Prof said that he will be acquitted, and also that he will not be acquitted by the public. The effect of this Republican gang-up is going to have a big backlash in America. I was in America a month and a half ago, and I can tell, I asked so many questions because I know I'm going to be asked by Ruben. And I asked practically over 50 people about their impression about what's going on in America, and everybody said they are just better with Donald Trump. Now, the implication of this is very glaring. The election is this year, and the way it's going is it's going on a very smooth sail for him. But the America that I know, I know very well, I am very, very confident that when the attack comes on Trump, I hope he has the temperament to handle it, because they have so much firepower now to really handle it.
Well, Dr. Okumu, in less than 1 minute, because we'll have to go shortly.
Well, I think what we saw play out there was the American system in action, the American political system in action. He was prosecuted by the
Congress.
By the Congress, and then acquitted by the jurors, that's the senators. And the votes weren't there. I think everyone knew right from the beginning, even from the first day the impeachment saga started. We knew that the votes weren't there in the Senate to convict him, because you would need 20 senators to switch and join the Republicans, the Democrats, to get 67 votes, which is 2/3, which is a very high bar to acquit. So it was a dead on arrival deal, and we knew, even coming from the House, that not one House Republican voted with the Democrats on any of the 2 articles of impeachment.
So it was a foreseeable.
From the House, I'm saying even in the House.
So it was a foreseeable, predictable outcome.
It was exactly.
Yes, but I guess at the end of the day, as Gomez pointed out, the final decision will probably be taken by the American people, because this is election year.
November.
The whole of the House of Reps is going for election. 2/3 of the Senate will be going for election. The president himself will be on the ballot to seek a second time in office. We hope, one way or the other, the American people will speak.